Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone to our City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Board public hearing today, September 9th, 2020. Let's go ahead and begin today by doing a roll call for our board. Chair Astle present, Vice Chair Sarkisian. I understand she's absent, that's right. Board Member Boyle.
Present.
Board Member Allen. Board Member Allen was present during our study session. Do we anticipate she'll be part of our hearing, or is she on the phone?
Chair, she's calling back in.
She should be on there
we'll
now.
come back to the name here. Board Member Crockett.
Present.
Board Member Villanueva Saucedo. I understand her to be absent as well. Board Member Ayers.
Here.
Thank you. And one last shot at Board Member Allen.
Here.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have Board Member Sarkisian and Board Member Villanueva Saucedo, both absent today. As part of today's agenda, we have a consent agenda with just a few items for discussion. We will read that consent agenda, but we wanted to make the public aware that we received requests for comment, so we've actually removed for discussion item number 3A from our consent agenda, as well as associated plat item 4A for the Zen on Wrecker project. Let's go ahead and move forward with the items that do remain. We're grateful to Board Member Ayers for his willingness to read this consent agenda, and let's go ahead and move forward with that part of our agenda.
All right, thank you. So items on the consent agenda include the approval of meeting minutes from the previous meeting. So PZ's 20113, minutes from the August 26, 2020 study session and regular hearing. Also 3B, PZ 20115, CON 20-00377, District 1 within the 3500 block of East Brown Road and the 1200 block of North Val Vista Drive, located at the northwest corner of Brown Road and Val Vista Drive. A rezone from AG to OCBIZ and site plan review. This request will allow for the development of medical and professional office building and use. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. And this completes our consent agenda.
I appreciate that. Do we have any items to discuss on this prior to voting from the board? Okay. I'm happy to receive a motion from one of the members.
Mr. Chair, I would move the consent agenda today as it's been read.
To be approved?
To be approved, yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on the consent agenda. Chair Astle votes yes. Board Member Boyle?
Yes.
Board Member Allen?
Yes.
Board Member Crockett?
Yes.
Board Member Ayers?
Yes.
With everyone unanimously votes yes, with Board Member Sarkisian absent, as well as Board Member Villanueva Saucedo absent. Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and move to the discussion of item 3A on our agenda today, case ZON 20-00283, District 2. This is within the 6,000 block of East Baseline Road and within the 1900 block of South Wrecker Road, East Side, located at the northeast corner of Wrecker Road and Baseline Road, approximately 6.7 acres. This request is a rezoning from AG to RM2 PAD and a site plan review. This will allow for a multi-residence development on the property. I also want to include in the discussion its companion case, which is item number 4A, Zen on Wrecker, District 2. And we would like to go ahead and turn the time over to staff for just a quick refresher presentation on this case. And then we'd like to hear, if possible, from the applicant, as well as the cards and those of the public that wish to speak. We want them to also have the opportunity. So we'll make sure and address each of those items. Ryan McCann, could you provide us with just a quick overview?
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Case before you this afternoon, ZON 20-00283. The request, as you just mentioned, is a rezone from AG Agriculture to RM2 multiple residence with a PAD overlay, site plan review, and preliminary plat. The request will allow for a multiple residence development. This will allow for townhomes, but there will be a single family attached product, and the proposed product will be for ownership, not rental products. As stated prior, the location of the project is at the northeast corner of Wrecker Road and Baseline Road. As you can tell, it is to the west of the site is zone PEP, that is the AT Still University campus. To the south of the site, across Baseline Road, is the town of Gilbert. To the east of the site is an existing industrial development, and north of the site, zone agriculture, is existing single residences. The general plan in the area is neighborhood suburban. Per this, the neighborhood suburban character type, the intent is to provide for a diversity of housing types. It also allows for higher density along the arterial frontages. As we look at the general plan, multiple family residences are permitted along the arterial frontages and at major intersections. As mentioned prior, the existing zoning on the property is agriculture, and they are proposing a multiple residence 2 with a planned area development overlay, RM2-PAD. As we take a look from the street view, the image on the left is towards the north end of the property, looking due east along Wrecker Road, and the image on the right is looking northeast towards the site along Baseline Road. As you can see from the site plan, the development of the site includes the proposed 76 townhomes. There's a proposed central amenity space, which will include a pool, amenity building, ramadas, fireplaces, as well as the main entrance will be off Wrecker Road. In addition, there will be an emergency secondary access off Wrecker Road, a little bit closer to Baseline Road. Proposed elevation is a little bit more of a modern concept. They are providing 3 different types of patios, one on the first floor, a second-story balcony, as well as kind of their main balcony, which will be over the proposed garages. If you look in the top left, that's kind of their entry into the site, as well as some of their perimeter theme walls along the street frontages. They kind of went with more of a open design with the metal posts and the columns versus just a solid wall design there. As part of the PAD request, they are asking for specific deviations to the Mesa zoning ordinance. The first deviation is the minimum front setback along a arterial road, which would be Baseline Road. The code does require 30 feet for building and landscape. They are requesting a 20-foot setback. The minimum street side setback for a collector road, which will be Wrecker Road in this instance, the west property line. The building and landscape setback is 25 feet for the zoning ordinance. They are requesting 20 feet. And the interior side setback, which would be the east property line adjacent to the light industrial, has a 30-foot building setback, and they are requesting a 20-foot building setback and keeping the 20-foot landscape the same. The minimum building separation for 2-story buildings is 30 feet. The applicant is proposing 14 foot 11 inches. And they are requesting that garage doors to be recessed from upper stories of the living facade of 3 feet be 0 foot. As part of their request, they are exceeding the private and public open space requirements per the code. They are providing a unique street frontage site wall design, a number of amenities in the amenity area towards the center of the site, as well as additional shrubs and ground cover per the Mesa zoning ordinance. It should note that there are no deviations proposed along the north property line in an attempt to buffer from the existing single residences to the north. The applicant did complete a citizen participation plan. They notified property owners within 1,000 feet, HOAs, and registered neighborhoods. The applicant did hold 2 neighborhood meetings. The first neighborhood meeting was back on March 9th. They were able to hold that in person. The second meeting was held on June 17th via WebEx due to the COVID-19 circumstances. Both well-attended neighborhood meetings. In summary, the neighbors had concerns about traffic, entering and exiting the development, property values, the loss of their neighborhood atmosphere, and the site layout. Included in your packet were 3 letters of oppositions from neighborhoods. After the packet went out, you were provided this morning with an additional 6 letters of opposition with similar concerns listed to those in the staff report and on the presentation. And I believe we'll be hearing from those citizens later today during the public speak. In summary, the request complies with the 2040 Mesa General Plan, meets the review criteria for a planned area development per section 1122 of the Mesa zoning ordinance, meets the review criteria for site plan review outlined in section 1169.5 of the Mesa zoning ordinance. And with that, staff is recommending approval with conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ryan, for this presentation. I think, I guess any questions from the board before we move on to applicant and public? Okay. At this point, I think if possible, if they're available, I'd like to at least have the applicant open up with a few words, and then I expect we'll want to listen to the neighbors as well as go through the other blue cards and whatnot that have been the comment cards that have been presented to us, and then follow that up with the applicants a little bit more time to discuss some of the items that they're addressing based on neighborhood concerns. So is the applicant available?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. This is Ralph Pugh, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant and property owner, Pacific Rim, and its principal, Anthony Miachka.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Yep.
Anything you'd like to address prior to listening to neighbor comment as well as going through comment cards?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do have a few thoughts and a short PowerPoint presentation here that we'd like to share with you, and then thank you for the opportunity to provide comment after the neighbor speaks so I can answer questions or comments that would come up there.
Sounds good.
So what I think we could do first to save some time, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Pacific Rim and Mr. Miachka. I think if we cover a few of the questions that were raised with the staff concerning the PAD earlier at the study session, I think that'd be very helpful. So this project does have a few requests for PAD deviations, but what I'd like the board members to please keep in mind is that those deviations are requested on the eastern boundary where this property adjoins the wall of an industrial project and on the baseline and wrecker frontages. It does not involve anything on the northern boundary where we adjoin and connect with the single-family residences there. In fact, I'll show you an exhibit in a minute that demonstrates how we've exceeded those setbacks and other requirements on the northern side of the property. The thought was, why does this project justify those deviations? And the reasons are very straightforward. One is we have enhanced and increased the landscaping significantly on wrecker and on baseline. Secondly, we've got a unique site wall design on the frontages. We have a tremendously enhanced amenity package. Once we get to the end of this PowerPoint, we'll show you some of the slides of the amenity package and what it means to this project. In addition, as you know, in multifamily, or what we call residential multiple now in the zoning code, you're required to have a certain amount of open space per unit, private open space. In this project, we exceed generously all of those minimum open space requirements. And I think finally, the best justification for all of it is the creative design and the real good, high-quality architecture that goes with this project, and the unique idea of having these open patios over the garages. So all of those elements combine, in our opinion, to justify the PAD deviations. And what the city gets out of this are those really good aspects of the project. Just want to also clarify, as we go through this, let's just take a quick look here. This is the site, as was indicated by Mr. McCann. What we really have here, board members, we've got about 6 acres of property that is what is left over from about 327 acres that were annexed in 1982. So in this area, there was a huge annexation that occurred. And at the time, not only was it annexed, but it was zoned agricultural in the city of Mesa, all of the land in that annexation. So what's happened? Here we are nearly 40 years later, and virtually all of that land that came in that annexation has had some type of zoning change to develop consistent with the existing general plans that existed over those 4 decades. And in reality, what's left, pretty much, is this 6 acres. And it still has the old ag zoning on it, has a couple of homes on it, and in fairness to our neighbors to the north who are not happy with this project coming in, their homes are large lot, beautiful homes on what they think and believe and have come to understand is Wrecker Road. It's almost become like a private drive in essence over all these years. And so understanding their concerns is easy to grasp. But applying the zoning principles to this case, as Mr. Appia indicated earlier in the study session, this site is surrounded by PEP and light industrial on the west. You see those buildings right there next to the red outline. Those are light industrial. Those are repair shops, small retail, auto repair, bike repair, motorcycle, you name it, it's all in there. And then the homes where the people live who will be talking with us are north of this site on Wrecker. And what leads to the quiet nature of Wrecker Road, board members, is that it's a dead end. It ends at the freeway, and at the end of this part of Wrecker Road, this is what I call the Mesa Wrecker, because there's the Gilbert Wrecker a few feet to the west. It ends in an ADOT landscape yard. So it has been quiet, private, and very personal to our neighbors to the north. And we'll cover a little of that here in just a minute. So this is the site, give you an idea where it is. This is the general plan that was mentioned earlier. The unique part of this general plan is not only is it in what's called the neighborhood suburban area, but it's in a transition area. You can see how the blue kind of shades over into it. This is clearly an area where it was anticipated that there would be a transitional use of some type between the employment on the west side of Wrecker and the suburban on the east. And our project, we believe, bridges that gap perfectly. And we'll explain why we do not think we're going to be inimical to the neighborhood here in just a minute. Interestingly, though, look at the allowed zoning uses here. See where it says primary zoning districts? The RM2 that we're asking for is a primary zoning district in the neighborhood suburban area. And oddly enough, the existing uses of our neighbors, who are all legal non-conforming, they're totally fine, there's no problem with them, they would not be allowed today. If someone came in and wanted to build on acre lots in this area, assume it was vacant, that type of development, those zoning districts are not allowed in the suburban neighborhood. Okay, so we're next to PEP and LI. You know enough about the code members, board members to understand what that means. This is interesting. This is the Gilbert General Plan. The red star is the property in question. All of the land on the south side of Baseline in the town of Gilbert is either business park, general commercial, or neighborhood commercial, except for that tiny little yellow spot where there's a house that still remains on Baseline. Other than that, everything from the canal over to the Wrecker Road alignment in Gilbert is all business park of one form or another, or industrial. So that's what surrounds us. On 3 sides are non-residential uses. This is a good exhibit to demonstrate again the site and the uses north of us. The neighbors that are here tonight, their homes are located on RS 43 land. Some of it is still in the ag district. And you look to the east here, to the right of the property highlighted in red, the LI is there, and the RM2 is the case that was approved last year that's currently under construction. Very, very similar to this project and design. Mr. McCann mentioned we're requesting the rezone to RM2 and site plan approval. This is a good depiction of the site plan and highlighting how it functions. We have 35 spaces, more than are required. We exceed the private open space, as we indicated earlier. So with respect to neighborhood outreach, board members, first of all, we fully believe that our site being on an arterial intersection is properly located for the multifamily use. and the design of these buildings are really, really nice. But as a result of our neighborhood meeting, here are the questions and comments that came from the neighbors. Can there be an entrance on Baseline Road? Can we put a traffic signal at Wrecker? We don't like the idea of more traffic in our neighborhood. Will we be required to give up right-of-way? Will we be required to connect to the city sewer? What's the impact on our privacy and property values? So let's take a look at those quickly, one at a time here. The reason we cannot put an access point on Baseline Road is really a fundamental principle of math and the fact that the town of Gilbert, frankly, has jurisdiction over Baseline Road at this location. And what you see here, the red line that goes across our frontage, our property is 390 feet in frontage. And a driveway is only allowed and must be separated by at least 300. So we have Wrecker on our west, and you see in the pink on the east of us, the drive aisle coming out of the industrial. There's no way you could locate a drive aisle on Baseline and comply with the 300-foot separation. In addition, you see there's an existing median in Baseline, and the thought of removing that and reconfiguring that is not one that Gilbert is interested in, and they much prefer our entrance on Wrecker. The other question from the neighbors was, well, let's at least put a traffic signal at Wrecker. Well, we have provided a traffic study that clearly indicates that there is not enough traffic, even with our new project, to warrant a traffic signal. It's well below the threshold where any signal would be considered, and there's already multiple signals very, very close to this site. So what is the true traffic impact? Really, I think the heart of our neighbors' concerns are they believe there'll be way too much traffic on Wrecker Road. And as I said, that perception comes from the fact that it's been very private to them for decades. But the truth of the matter is, the existing traffic, as you see on the top line, is 17 trips in the morning and 21 trips in the afternoon peak hours today, with an estimated total trips of 171. What that means is when you come to the intersection of Wrecker and Baseline and you want to turn left, there's about a 29 to 30 second wait on average. Sometimes you get right out, other times you might wait a minute or two. But that's the average wait time. Our project, the middle column, will add 37 trips in the morning and 46 trips in the peak hour in the afternoon. And the net result of it is about a 4 to 5 second average wait time longer. So I again believe that our wonderful neighbors sense and believe that everybody that lives in this project is going to leave at the same time, and there's going to be a queue of traffic clear back up on Wrecker Road. We know from statistics and from the trip generation manual that's just not the case, and this traffic information has been provided, and we indicate that a very minimal impact on traffic. We will dedicate our share of Wrecker Road, and the neighbors were initially worried that they would have to dedicate Wrecker as a result, and the answer to that is no, they do not have to do that. Here's the most curious question of all, that really we didn't understand when we started this case. The neighborhood, all those homes are on septic systems, and they're very concerned that if we extend the sewer line up Wrecker Road, they will then be required to connect to it. The answer to that is no, because we're only taking the sewer line up to our entrance, which is only halfway for the length of our property, and the neighbors are not required to connect to it. They would only be required to do that if they want to rezone their property or subdivide their property or do something like that, then sewer connections could be triggered, but not as a result of what we're doing in this application. Here's a quick example of the buffering that I was talking about on the northern side of the project. If you look at the exhibit on the left-hand side, that's our northern boundary. There are 4 buildings there, and each building sides on in the project. So the building that you see that's 30 feet, that's in the northwest corner of our property. That meets all of the code setbacks. The 2 other buildings east of that now are at 60 or more. We've set those back twice as much as the code requires. And then the one on the far east end is 43 feet. So we have met or exceeded the setback requirements by the code. Now, here's the interesting thing, board members. Zoning codes are designed to create situations where uses that are not the same can become compatible because of their design. That's why the City of Mesa Code specifically says when a multifamily project that's 2 stories in height adjoins a single-family project, then you must have at least 30 feet of setback. And we are complying with that. And those are the sides of buildings. Those are not patios, and those are not where people would be congregating. Those are building sides. It's always a question of, are we going to affect someone's property value? Mr. Chairman and members of the board, our view of that is the answer is no. In fact, we believe that what's going to happen here is we're bringing a product that doesn't exist. This is not an apartment. This is not high density. These are well-designed townhomes. This product does not exist in the area. It will bring very middle to upper-end financial qualifiers to buy these townhomes. And frankly, I think our neighbors can relax on property values because when an appraiser values their properties on acre lots and larger, they're not going to use square footage comparables with a townhome to determine price. They will use comparables that are the same type and nature. All right, I'll quit here, Mr. Chairman, with a quick run through of the design so you know what we're talking about. This is the entrance on Wrecker, and I know this isn't your purview. We'll ultimately go to design review, but this demonstrates the quality that we're talking about here. Here's an inside shot from the parking to the units. This is a great rendering of Wrecker Road going north. And you can see here what it looks like and what it will look like, and it's really an attractive product. Now we begin to see the quality of the amenities inside, and again, Mr. Miachka has built several of these projects, very similar in size and nature to this, and has had great success. More of the common amenities. Great shot here of the amenity areas. And this is looking from our neighbor on the north, the Scotts. Their home actually faces west, so they side onto our property. This is what it would look like with the wall, the landscaping, and the trees that we plan to plant inside our property line. Done the best we can to provide buffering and privacy. That's the internal fitness center. Mr. Chairman, you've been very, very patient with me this afternoon. Thank you. We urge your support and recommendation. This is where this type of project belongs. Frankly, I drove from Power to Val Vista today on Baseline. You can't find single-family homes on the north side of Baseline, so I think it'd be very unrealistic to expect that to happen. And no one is coming in here with a commercial project at this location. Higley's too concentrated with it, and so's Power. So, Mr. Chairman, we urge your support, a recommendation of approval, and I'll be happy to answer questions and reserve an opportunity to answer neighborhood questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pugh. I appreciate your time. Okay, let's, at this point, I'd like to open up the public hearing for just to hear from the neighbors and those who are concerned. Maybe the best way to approach that is our comment list and the cards, and I understand, Becky, if you could help us go through those, and those who wish to speak, we give them the opportunity and just make sure we address each of them.
Thank you, Chair. Board members, our first caller was Russell Kennedy, and he would like to speak.
And if we could make sure and manage, as we might have numerous speakers today, if we could address just 3 minutes per speaker, that would be very helpful. That way we give everybody the opportunity, and hopefully staff can help us with that as we're all kind of at a distance today.
Chair, do they have a way of knowing the callers? Or do we need to let them know when they're at 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes?
Board Member Boyle, we will introduce them, and they will start speaking. They can unmute their phone by doing *6. And so we're ready for Russell Kennedy to speak. And he has 3 minutes.
Chair, members of the board, let's remind the resident to also provide the address, their names and then address as well for the record.
Sounds great.
This is Russell Kennedy. Can you hear me?
Hi, Russell. How you doing? Thanks for being here.
Very good.
Could you take your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes?
Sure thing. Hey, I'd like to point out, Mr. Pugh got over 16 minutes to plead his case, and he gets to be there in person, whereas we're not allowed, and I get 3 minutes. Anyway, my name is Russell Kennedy. I live at 1831 South Recker Road. Me and my wife and 4 children have chosen this area to be our forever home, to raise our children here. It's a great community, one of the last ones like this left in Mesa, Arizona. This proposition of rezone must be rejected. One of the latest statements that Mr. Pugh stated was that there's no commercial property that would go in here. That's a flat out lie. The owners, the previous owners of Paces, admitted in the last public meeting that they've been approached by churches, by memory care centers, by medical offices, by industrial facilities to build in this area. So that is a lie. Traffic gridlock on Recker Road. I see the study that was done. I raise strong skepticism that that's reality. We've had at the end of our road, ADOT and DPS and law enforcement and maintenance crews that have come up and down. There are several times that we have to wait to get out. And I've stopped and talked to a lot of them over the last couple months. And each and every one of them has said, if you add another 193 cars on this road, you're going to have constant accidents. People trying to turn left out of here, people trying to turn right. You're going to get a backup on Baseline Road turning north onto Records. It's going to go all the way out into the intersection. I would strongly suggest before this is even thought about as reality, that why doesn't somebody from the staff approach DPS or ADOT and ask them what they think is going to be the reality of what's going on out there? Because I don't think this study, it gave the answer that Mr. Pugh and the developer wanted, but it doesn't give a reality of what's happening out here in the streets. One of the other things we talked about that was glossed over is the increased incidence of trespassing. All the residents on this street take great pride and care in upkeeping with their landscaping and fruit trees that border Recker Road. There's a public sidewalk on the west side of Recker, but nobody ever comes down Recker uses it because our properties are just much more appealing. We're constantly picking up animal waste and everything else on the front of our lawns. When we brought this up, Mr. Pugh himself even acknowledged that this definitely will be increased and that we, quote, don't own the street. We don't live in a community that has an HOA. We all take ownership and pride in our community, and we take care of our lawns and our properties. Why would you want us to take the attitude of, well, we don't own the streets, so we don't care what happens out there, and here's our delineation line and nothing we can worry about, and we don't want to take care of the rest of our street. The idea of decreased property values, Mr. Pugh did acknowledge in public meetings that this will decrease our property values. But that insult to injury, it wouldn't decrease them based on an appraiser, so we would still pay the same amount of taxes to the county. We just would have a lower sellable value on our properties. One of the comments that was spoken here was talking about the zoning standards that are currently established. We're shown a map of the general plan designations and pointed out that we have a right to do this. Well, said another way, our community has worn out our welcome in the city of Mesa. We've worn out our welcome here because we've been here, too long, and we need to get with the times. Is that really the message that the city council and the planning and zoning board wants to send to one of the great and last communities like this in the city of Mesa?
Excuse me, Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
thank you. You've got the 3 minutes done. We need to move on to the next caller. Thank you, Chair. Board members, David Kutchin at 1851 South Recker would like to speak.
Chair. Becky, thank you. Yeah. Chair, if you don't mind, I think it would be fair to give the person about 30 seconds to wrap up. And then for the next caller, we will remind the person after 2 minutes that he's got 1 more minute so he can wrap up.
I would definitely appreciate that. If we can give them a little bit of a warning, that way they can, just in case something got missed. Russell, if you do have a few more comments, we'd love to hear them prior to cutting you off there.
I do have a few more minutes, a few more things I'd like to say. Look, before you make any decisions to rezone this into multi-use residential or multifamily residential and give Mr. Pugh and the developer all the setback changes and all the variances they want, how come they couldn't have a variance or request a variance for access? How come they can get a variance for every other setback or any other standard or distance except for that? And look, condos, they're fine after the first year or two, and once the first cycle goes through, they're a middle stopping ground. These things are going to degrade and decay. They're not going to look like they did before. Everybody knows this. It's going to decrease our property values. It's going to kill our community. It's going to clog up our streets. This is a terrible and bad idea. We know that something is going to be built there eventually. We understand that. But this is probably one of the worst options that there can be. Thank you for the additional time.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is David Kutchin at 1851 South Recker. Ready when you are, David.
You could remind him, Becky, how to chime in.
Right. Mr. Kutchin, if you hit *6, you'll be able to speak. And you'll have 3 minutes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, board members, can you hear me now?
There we go. Thank you. If you could remind us name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is David Kutchin. My wife, Stacy, and our 5 children reside at 1851 South Recker Road there. Just so you know, Mr. Chairman, we were told by Mr. McCann that if we had 1, 2, or 3 speakers for the group, that we'd be given more time. That was what we had planned to do. Mr. Kennedy just spoke on my behalf. I plan to speak on his behalf. I know Kay Scott is going to speak on all of our behalf as well. So it was a very big surprise to hear that we were going to be limited to 3 minutes here today. That's not what we were told if we were to have a group speaker, if you will. So that's the way we wanted to approach this.
Yeah, and we're
anyway,
happy to work with you on that. I have not personally been told anything about that pattern that you wanted to follow. So if there's something that we would like to change and make work for you guys to get what you're saying out, we're happy to do it. Just sometimes with the amount of people, we have to limit it just to make sure we can get to everybody. So we're happy to make it work.
I appreciate that very much. And I don't know, maybe there are other neighbors that are planning on speaking, but I thought it was just going to be Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Kay Scott and myself. But anyway, amen to everything that was just uttered by Russell Kennedy. He hit the nail on the head. Mr. Pugh, the last comment he made our case for us. He talked about how busy Higley is. He talked about how busy Power Road is. Think about, I don't know exactly what the City of Mesa's master plan is here, but if you think about Baseline Road and the number of high-density, multiple family use locations between Greenfield and the 202 on the north side of Baseline, I would say is astounding. Think of all the apartment complexes, that major, huge complex that was just finished right over by Greenfield Road. Anyway, and we don't have any idea what Xenon Tower, or whatever that one's called, the old Rockin' R Ranch site, is going to do. There's somewhere near 90 townhomes there. I just completely think we're jumping the gun on this thing to approve 90 there, and then let's throw in another 76 or 80 at this site, which is 600 feet away, 450 feet away. I'm not sure. My wife and I just built our dream home a year and a half ago. We finished. You cannot imagine. Maybe you can. You probably can, because maybe some of you were part of it. But the hoops that we had to jump through, and the bars that we had to cross with staff and the planning committee, the commission, the development services office, in order to obtain a building permit and rezone to I can't remember what it is, RM43 or RS43. Our home sits on more than an acre of land. It's very consistent with the other homes there on Recker Road. But still, we were put through the absolute ringer in order to build our dream home. And to hear Mr. Pugh talk about deviation after deviation after deviation after deviation is a bit insulting, if I'm being honest. I had to get a council member, and I had to get Christine Zalonka, the Development Services Director, personally involved in my case. And luckily for us, and we're extremely grateful that she had common sense, and backed our position, overruling many of staff's recommendations and prior holdings and such. I don't want to beat a proverbial dead horse. This is a bad idea. This is, I mean, how many multiple family residences do we need in this stretch of land? I don't think this is a bad thing for Mesa, but put it out on Elliott, put it out on Ellsworth, put it on the 202 corridor. Don't jam it in 80 more residences on a 6.5 acre site. It's crazy. I mean, this is not Los Angeles. It's not New York City. This is Mesa, Arizona. As Russell indicated, what's left? Maybe a little tiny section of Lehigh that still kind of looks like this, North Mesa. There are a few little pockets up in North Mesa on Brown or other places where there's a little bit of agriculture or horse property. But, I mean, this is an extremely unique situation, extremely unique place, and I don't want to see it given away. I sincerely hope that the city of Mesa doesn't just roll over for this developer because you're looking for, whatever, more homes, tax dollars, whatever it may be. I hope that you'd all consider. I hope Mr. Pugh and each of you is honest with yourself. If this project was coming into your back door or into the side of your house with a 30-foot, thank you, with a 30-foot variance, you wouldn't want it. There's no way you'd approve this if this was coming to be your next door neighbor. And so we hope that you extend us the same courtesy to think like that on our behalf. Anyway, there's plenty of traffic, as Russell indicates. There's Roosevelt Water Conservation District trucks. There's DPS officers, police officers going up and down that street constantly. We're certainly worried about traffic. I agree. If this thing does go through, there's no way that you can allow the entrance to be on Record Road. Give them the deviation for baseline if that's what it requires. But I think there's plenty of sites in Southeast Mesa where a sprawling piece of land can be set aside for something like this. Record's a one-way street.
That's fine.
We, as was indicated, okay, the freeway ends it. So there's only one way out, and that's what's coming. Anyway, I would say that enough is enough. Let's see what happens with Zen on baseline before we get another Zen, jammed down our throats, because this certainly isn't going to be our Zen. It's going to be the developer's Zen and maybe Mr. Pugh's, and that's, I think, about it. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. Becky, could you help me know how many total people request to speak today besides the two that we've heard from?
We have one more speaker, and she is representing the homeowners
Perfect.
as a group. So she'll be able to speak for 5 minutes.
That sounds great.
It's Kay Scott, and she's at 1855 South Recker Road. And Ms. Scott, if you would hit *6, you'll be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Scott, could you please state your name and address for us, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Kay Scott. I live at 1855 South Recker Road, and my husband and I live here. Raised the last of our family here. We will be directly abutting this property. So we have a lot of concern and a lot of emotion tied up into this. So I've been asked by my neighbors to speak. We were told that if we all have about the same concerns, and if there 2 or 3 of us would speak, that we would all be given more time, and that's what we came in here thinking. But I've been asked by the Seshans, the Harbertsons, the Browns, the Beebes, 2 families of Kennedys, 3 families of Uries, and the Cutchins and the Busbys to voice some of our concerns, some of which have already been spoken. But we do oppose completely, all unitedly oppose this project. My family and I have lived here for over 20 years. We've been Mesa residents for over 45 years, and all 7 of our children graduated from Mesa High. Most of them all still live in Mesa as well and are raising their family in this city. With a large family, we were so thrilled to find our Recker Road. We wanted a place with a little acreage. We live here with like-minded people who also enjoy having a little elbow room. In fact, most of our neighbors all come from families who've been citizens of Mesa for decades and more. The Brown family has lived here for 7 generations, in fact. But the biggest joy of living on this street is the community that we have built with our neighbors. We put in the time and the effort to become well acquainted and to become friends. We have each other's backs. We watch each other's children. We bring meals when people are sick or distressed. We do errands for each other. We spend time together, enjoy having fun together. And we do these things because we actually have gotten to know each other and we know what's happening in each other's lives so that we can celebrate with each other and we can grieve with each other. And in a world now where everybody says that hardly anybody ever knows of their neighbors, we have made the effort to do so. And all of our lives here are enriched because we have that. And as has been mentioned before, there's just very few of these little pockets left. And we feel like that is getting shoved down our throat and being taken away from us. So 100%, you have to realize that 100% of these Mesa residents who live on our street oppose this project. We oppose Record Road being made into multifamily housing. We all live here. We all probably laughed out loud when Mr. Pugh was giving the traffic signal. Well, the traffic, we live here on a daily basis. And even with COVID and what people are calling less traffic, my husband waited 5 minutes the other day to make a left turn onto Baseline. We know what reality is. With the traffic already, it takes several minutes of waiting if you want to turn left. And often just to turn right. More traffic is going to be ridiculous. And we already know that then on Baseline or whatever they're calling it where Rock and R goes in, it's going to further increase traffic already. As already been mentioned, there are tons of high density apartments and housing projects on the north side of Baseline, all the way from Greenfield to Ellsworth. I really can't imagine that any more is needed, especially one that doesn't even come close to trying to match the neighborhood that it's being forced upon. And we know that the city of Mesa has a bit of a reputation. We've heard from realtors for building too many of these complexes, and we really do hope that you don't approve this one, because every family here came for the room and for the acreage. And we understand that some people like to live in these proposed complexes. But for people who don't and who actively search a place where we didn't have to live like that, it's a really bitter pill to have it forced upon us. We all have consulted with realtors, most all of us have, and we have been told by multiple different ones that our property values will take a significant hit if this goes through. It really does add insult to injury because we feel like we don't have a lot of control over this, and it affects our very quality of life. On the other hand, we all do understand that Record and Baseline is prime property and will be developed someday. We know the place has had multiple opportunities to sell to someone else. None of those would we have ever even thought against. We're not opposed to businesses or assisted living or something else going in on Baseline. We also all know several people who would like to build homes on Record. It's a beautiful community. Ideally, it would be wonderful to have a business fronting Baseline and then another home on Record Road to make use of this property. And we all do absolutely understand that there is a place for high-density, multi-story housing. But it does not make sense to approve it in an established neighborhood of acre lots. We hope that you realize that we're just people. We've worked hard, we've paid our taxes, we've lived and attended schools in Mesa. We're loyal citizens. And I hope you can take from my comments that our neighborhood has a personality and consider for a moment where you live. If a project was proposed that would negatively affect you in so many ways, would you approve it? We literally are praying that you don't approve this one. And it is beyond frustrating to us that a wealthy developer from Canada who lives part-time in Scottsdale might be granted so much power to change the lives of so many long-time Mesa residents. We are united on this street and urging you to please vote no and allowing this rezoning change. Thank you for giving me some time to speak.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your comments. Hey, Becky, I believe we have other comment cards.
We do, Chair. I'll read those. We got one for Peggy Uri at 1863 South Record Road. She would like to state that she opposes we absolutely oppose this, It will increase auto foot traffic and decrease safety. It will increase light population, pollution, and noise, and decrease green space. This is not what we want for our neighborhood. We believe there are other opportunities for high-density living available elsewhere. Again, we received Kay Scott. She just spoke. She did not want her comment read. She is opposed at 1855 South Recker. Amber,
I'm getting a little bit of reverberation here. I don't know if it's if there's something that could be muted. Maybe it's, would it be those who have recently spoke that we're hearing, or are those shut off?
that's better?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Amber Kennedy, 1831 South Recker Road, is opposed to the project. She states, "I strongly oppose this proposal to rezone this area. I have been a Mesa resident my entire life. This community is the place that I chose to raise my children and spend the rest of my life. The addition of all these units will kill the rural feel and the sense of community that all of us on this street have." We received a card from Michael Habertson at 1721 South Recker. He's opposed to the project and does not wish his comments to be read. We have a card from Misty Brown, 1735 South Recker. She opposes the project and does not want her comments read. Timmy Brown, 1735 South Recker, opposes the project and states, "I've had 2 family members as Mesa mayors. Having an old partner as an ex-member of the Planning and Zoning Board, I understand the gravity of relationships. I know of Mr. Lake through their friendship. When I heard about this rezoning, my statement was to use Pugh and Lake, we won't lose, as our attorneys to fight this. When it came to light he was representing the opposition, I stated to my neighbors, sorry, we might be fighting a foregone conclusion because I understand his relationships. Nonetheless, I am absolute opposition to this project. Is COVID in consideration in all future zoning?" Brian Sikon, I didn't say that right, 1711 South Recker, also opposes the project and states, "I oppose this project for a myriad of reasons, which will be supported with my neighbors who will be speaking on behalf of the residents of this project. The proposed entrance on Recker being the biggest reason. With only one entrance exit being at baseline, it will greatly impact our safety and traffic if 70-plus units and 150-plus cars enter our small street on top of the ADOT, Roosevelt Water, DPS vehicles that already access their area via South Recker Road." The final comment card we received is from John Beebe at 1755 South Recker. He also opposes the project and states, "My name is John Beebe. Me and my family have lived on Recker Road for over 40 years. Through those years, yes, things have changed. But what hasn't changed is residents living on 1 or 2 acre lots. This has always been the attraction of our street. We are strongly opposed to having Zen on Recker Road at the end of our street due to traffic concerns. Adding another 80 families to a street that's only a quarter mile long will cause way too much pressure on the street. Along with the current families on the street, we also have an ADOT office at the end along with DPS." And that concludes the comment cards I have received for this case.
Thank you very much for reading those for us today and managing through that. And I do appreciate so very much all of the comments that we receive from the public. It's impossible to know all of these concerns without your input and your willingness to speak, and I hope all of you do know that. At this point, we'll close our comments from the public. We would like to just by way of kind of responding to a lot of your comments, I want you to know that we'll invite Mr. Pugh back for his comments to what your questions and concerns are, not to add more time to his, but mainly just so that we can get some clarity as to what has been achieved by way of their efforts to mitigate some of these issues, and that way we can better make a decision. So Mr. Pugh, willing to address these concerns, I know some of which we heard at the beginning, but just your thoughts about how you guys have worked together with the neighbors to make this a community that could work, or addressing some of the things that seem to not work. Just curious.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much. I'll respond to some of the issues raised. Let me first say that I think from the beginning, there has been a feeling on behalf of the neighbors who live there that they oppose the multifamily nature of this project. And frankly, there wasn't much we could do from a design point of view other than move the access to baseline that I think would have changed that. You heard their comments. They're heartfelt. They're real. It's just that from our perspective, the multifamily density that we're at here and the townhome project is the exact thing the general plan anticipates at this arterial intersection. And I would have to just add that as much as we wish we could come to an arrangement with the neighbors, I don't think that was possible, and I think they would agree with that. So we buffered the northern boundary more than is required. The deviations we're talking about here are particularly on Baseline and Record, and it's covered and amplified by significant landscaping, and the eastern boundary adjoins a wall of an industrial project. So those deviations are not harmful to the neighbors. I would also like to just add, this is a project that comes to you with full staff support after their analysis of it. Clarify, it's not relevant, but Mr. Anthony Miachka actually lives in Scottsdale, but that's not totally relevant to what we're talking about. The other thing about variances, someone asked, well, why can't we get a variance for the access point on Baseline? That is an engineering, traffic safety engineering issue that is not dealt with through the variance process of the Planning and Zoning Board, the Planning and Zoning staff. It is an engineering issue, so it wouldn't occur in this setting. And frankly, Gilbert controls it and has recommended that the access be on Record. I think I would just leave you with this thought, board members, with all respect that I can give to our neighbors who love where they are. I'm at a complete loss as to how this project would change in any way the nature of their properties and their enjoyment of them. Their lot sizes are going to stay the same. We're not going to encroach on them. This is a gated community. Certainly people will walk out of the community. They'll walk up Record Road, a public road, by the way. And I think the implicit assumption is that somehow there's going to be some inconsistency but with the human beings that live in a townhome project, as high scale as this is and high quality, with the folks that currently live there. And we don't anticipate that to be a problem. We think it'll work well. It'll simply be this project and its quality at the entrance of two arterial roads. So with that, we really don't have much more to add other than we urge your recommendation of approval to the City Council, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions that any of you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Pugh before we close this portion and begin our discussions? Okay. Oh,
thank you.
Go ahead, Board Member Crockett.
I do have a question. Good afternoon, Mr. Pugh.
Hello, Mr. Crockett.
My question is regarding the concern over traffic. And I understand, I think, a little bit better now than I did coming into the meeting today, the issue where you've got a street which ends on the north end. So there's really only one way out of the subdivision. And you talked about a traffic study earlier that, and I don't remember the numbers, I didn't jot them down, but you had an average time of a wait. And my question is that calculated over a 24-hour period? And one of the speakers said that her husband, it took 5 minutes to make a left-hand turn out onto Baseline. Are there times during the day when under current conditions, people may have to wait 5 minutes to make a turn onto Baseline? I'd just like to hear your comments on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board Member Crockett. The answer to your question is yes, the wait times at Record to turn either west or east on Baseline varies significantly depending on the issues going on Baseline. The real question here is Baseline. Baseline is a busy arterial. And this is a very unusual circumstance where a very quiet and not very often used Wrecker Road intersects with a major busy arterial. So it's not unusual to have the wait times that could have been suggested in this meeting today. But what I think most people don't grasp is that when you think of 76 townhome units, you automatically think 2 vehicles per unit. Everybody's leaving between 6:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and they will all go out on Wrecker Road at the same time. The traffic study and analysis that we provided indicates through years of study, the trip generation manual is the gospel for traffic engineers, and they follow that. And the trip generation from 76 units is about 37 exits on Wrecker Road to baseline in the morning hours from about 7 to 9. It's not all 76. It never is. And so, yes, there will be a slight delay at Wrecker and baseline. But as I indicated earlier, those are not unusual delays and certainly not uncommon with these two types of roads intersecting with each other. But it's not the overwhelming feeling that the neighbors are portraying. It won't be all 140 vehicles leaving at the same time. That just doesn't happen, and that's why this traffic study is over a 24-hour period, but it focuses on AM and PM peak hours.
Thank you for that explanation. And Mr. Chair, I will have a couple of questions for staff at the appropriate time when we get into a discussion on this issue.
I appreciate it. Any other comments from Mr. Pugh? So yeah, I equally, thank you, Mr. Pugh, for your time. Equally for staff at this point, I would like to address the traffic as well, as that is a concern of mine, especially listening to the neighbors. And I know other board members are thinking, as we heard from Board Member Crockett, a traffic signal seems like it could be a very good opportunity to resolve a good number of these issues. I do know that we heard from Mr. Pugh that a traffic signal, is not yet, I guess I'd say the traffic burden is not yet sufficient enough to require a signal. Staff, were you able to go through this? And I know you have, you recommend, and I know that you commonly use the City of Mesa traffic staff to make sure things work. Speak a little toward what the City of Mesa has done to confirm what issues could occur here, or that it works, or there's plenty of room, or when a signal might be triggered, just to start thinking through what the future might bring at this location.
Chair, members of the board, so just to give you an idea, whenever we have a development proposal, it does get reviewed by the development review team, which includes planning, traffic engineering, civil engineering, all the departments. So before we make a recommendation to you, our recommendations are based on every city staff that reviewed the project and their recommendation. In terms of traffic, before I even proceed, we do have a staff person from our transportation engineering here to answer that question for you. But typically, traffic lights are based on trip generation. That's what determines the location of traffic lights. But I will ask him to really clarify on that issue.
That would be great. Thank you.
Chairman, board members, we did review this site substantially for its trip generation, and the numbers do fall within the MUTCD, which is the national guidelines for both trip generations and for not needing a signal at this location.
Okay, and is it anticipated, well, I guess maybe a better question, are we close to where that might be triggered in the future, or when and what triggers these changes, so that, if it gets up from 5 to 8 minutes for some reason due to, new traffic or a new development, when is this something that the citizens need to get involved in, or is this something that's watched over? Just curious, wanting to give some comfort to those that are wondering when they might see relief, especially if continued development occurs.
Sure, Chairman. There is a means for citizens to request what's called a traffic study or a transportation study at a particular intersection that our department, the transportation department, will go out and we will do various measures to count the numbers of vehicles at a particular intersection, both AM, PM, peak hour, off peak hour, especially around school hours, which is not considered peak hour. And we can do that through a number of means, and we do that all the time to keep tabs on not only traffic, but potential dangerous intersections, for pedestrian crossing, for vehicle crossing. So there are a number of measures. This particular intersection, because Wrecker is essentially a dead end at the north end, falls well below any threshold for a traffic signal at this time.
That makes sense to me. And as it relates to dangers and concerns for ingress and egress, are we past that at this point, and you, the traffic engineer, is comfortable with the development as proposed?
Yes, Chairman. That's essentially where we are at this point.
Okay. I appreciate your time. Any other questions? Board Member Crockett.
Yeah, if I just could follow up. I have two questions. Number one is, will the new development of Zen on Baseline, will that impact the wait times at Wrecker and Baseline? And if so, did you factor that development into your evaluation of the wait times for the Zen on Wrecker project?
Board Member Crockett, I will have to look into that. Traffic counts for each project is looked individually, but all previous projects that impact the corridors are taken into account. So I would have to say yes, but to specifically count the number of trips from Zen on Baseline as it impacts Zen on Wrecker, I cannot speak to that directly, but I can certainly get you an answer.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chair, I had one final question, and that is, with regard to ADOT operating a facility on Wrecker, do they have any extra power to be able to get a signal at that intersection? Any idea on that?
Not that I am aware of. It comes down to the number of trips that they generate. Their right-of-way is not in this area, and they typically do not like to speak outside of their boundaries, but I made a note for myself for Mr. Kennedy's comment to check with both DPS and ADOT to see what kind of experience they've had on this stretch of Wrecker.
Yeah. And I think it's good that this can be, as it relates to the signal, something that is evaluated over time and addressed in the right way based on need. So I like that can be a continual conversation. Any other comments or discussion from board members? Or we can, at this point, just discuss the project and any concerns or questions you have. I for one, this is an extremely difficult one because I feel the neighbors' concern very clearly in their comments and can relate directly to what that would be like. I knowing that this is a vacant, or at least a semi-vacant parcel with a few homes on it that will be developed, I tend to have difficulty knowing what the perfect situation would be overall, as I tend to lean a little closer to staff's recommendation, as I do agree as kind of a fairly soft buffer between all these different uses. This seems to fit in my mind and could work as a really good addition to the neighborhood. All of that said, that doesn't take away from the reality of my thinking and constant thought about the comments, because I worry the same. And I think if traffic over time, if we could get that signal in there, I'd agree that would be a great method to mitigate the issues. I think the applicant is tried their best, and I understand that can be difficult, to create the best buffer possible between the properties to the north. And I appreciate that they have spent time not taking away from or modifying the setbacks in that area, just in the east and west and south sides. So any other comments from the board? What are we thinking? And are there any other questions for staff or concerns that we want to address?
Something that I want to make sure I heard this right. Maybe you guys can fix this or correct me on it. I think one of the neighbors was commenting that COVID might be throwing off the traffic counts of a traffic study. But if I heard it right, the engineers said it's from a national standard. It's not derived, that it wouldn't have a deviation because of COVID recently. Did you guys catch that too, or am I making that up?
I did hear that, and maybe if we could invite the traffic engineer to just comment on if there is any COVID-related deviations to what would normally occur, or if that was addressed in a different way.
Chairman and board members, the numbers that were used are national numbers, and they are non-COVID related numbers. So they're the correct numbers. Coincidentally, our department, the transportation department, has picked numerous corridors and numerous intersections to study during this COVID time, just to see how the city of Mesa is impacted. Coincidentally, those numbers follow the national trend of about a 30% reduction in all traffic at almost all corridors and intersections. But the study that was done for this project did not use those numbers. It used the normal, non-COVID national numbers.
I appreciate your comment.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Well, we're just talking about it now, right? Is that
just talking,
Chair? Okay, now it's the chatting part. I feel too very much for the residents. You find this perfect little area out in the west. You've got a canal. You know, you've got your backyards touching a canal, so you've got water going through there. Like there's this perfect little oasis in there, and then the city comes in. It's like in Lonesome Dove with Gus. They go out and they're in the Wild West, and then they have to. He says, you know, and now bankers and dentists are going to move in afterwards. You know, we've got this big open area, and then all these other people come in. And this one, since there's a dental school right there, like it's literally what Gus is talking about in the book. I do have a question, and I don't know if any of you do enough real estate. When a multifamily project like this comes in that's owned, I don't know what the effect actually is on property values. I'd imagine that it could be varied. Does anyone on the board have any knowledge of that, or maybe staff? Has there ever been any research done as to what the typical impact is of you know, when these are going to go in, these are going to be luxury units. They're going to have some effect. Are they really going to take down single-family home property values, or would they do the opposite? Does anyone know?
I mean, I can not speak to actual fact, but the one thing that we all tend to hear very commonly, and I believe that it makes sense to me, is when you have a single family attached product similar to what we're seeing here, you have a different type of owner. You know, these are like we heard in the presentation, we got a mid to high level qualifying party for these loans, and they're going to take some pretty real care of their property, or expect that the HOA is maintained and also takes care of the surrounding property. So I would be encouraged greatly by that, and as part of why I could see this being a great addition to a major arterial like this. But as it relates to a rental and the transient living that occurs there, I could see that the difference naturally would occur, that you don't have that same ownership. I couldn't speak to what real numbers would be, though.
Yeah, I know when it's a rental unit, it's a kind of whole different category. Ownership, I guess I'd be curious to know what the actual effect is. I liked someone was talking about what else could go there. I had a hard time envisioning some ideas. They said maybe a church or medical office, and I could see those working too. But I don't see anything that prohibits this use. I see this use being the kind of blend that one would want. I guess the other question that I keep coming up is, that light industrial went in there that has print shop and martial arts academy and stuff. I wonder what the effects that has had on the neighborhood. Of course, it's a different thing with different amounts of people, but it's already, there's some different things going on in that neighborhood with the college across the street and the print shop and the beauty supply store right there next door. So I mean, there's a bit of a mix going on. I don't see this as being terribly out of place, given the mix that's already there. Although, I mean, I certainly, when things like this come into my neighborhood, we get together and we address it head on, and we try and get as many concessions as possible. I do appreciate also that they kept the setback on the north side and that they're heavily planting that. I think that kind of, it keeps it as its own thing. It kind of sets it apart. You probably, aside from the ones that are right there on the street that are fronting that, it's probably not even something that's going to be noticed for the most part, unless you happen to be driving down Wrecker. So.
Yeah. Any other comments from board members at this point?
Chair
echo.
Aspel. Oh.
Yes. Go ahead, board member Ayers.
I was just say I echo a lot of that. Very similar kind of thoughts, Dane, to you and Tim as well. So I think looking at, and studying this a little bit more today as well, there are 2 multifamily projects within a little more than a half mile in each direction. So there is some precedent as well. But I echo a lot of what has already been said. So go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. Board member Crockett.
Thank you. I've read all the comments that were submitted by the homeowners. I've listened to the comments today, and of all the things that they've said, the one that still troubles me is this issue of access in and out of the property. And there's an intersection that I go through every day on my commute in Mesa. And I think it's about a minute to a 90-second. If you hit it wrong, it's like up to 90 seconds that you're sitting there, and it drives me crazy. And the thought of sitting at an intersection waiting to get out for 5 minutes, and this development will certainly add to that time. It's not going to detract from the time that it takes to get out there. And I know that when you're sitting there, if you've got a traffic signal, you're more patient because you're going to get your turn. But without a traffic signal, you sit there, and if you're in a hurry or if you're, whatever, you may, make a foolish move and try to get across the street when maybe there's not time. So I do think there's a bit of a safety issue, and I'm concerned that there's no other way out. There's not another option for homeowners to get out onto Baseline and get out and exit their neighborhood. So I wish there was a better resolution for this, but it's a concern that I have.
Yeah.
I wonder, since the traffic engineer's been here, what would merit it? Like, are we at half? Are they at half capacity? He said it was way low for capacity. Are they at half? Are they at 2/3? Or are they at a quarter? I don't know that we need the answer to that, but.
No, I don't know that we need to invite him up here. We've heard it, but I do agree. But here's the reality. I mean, there's a cul-de-sac on Wrecker, and across the street, we're leading into a development. We're not a through street, and that'll probably constantly pose a challenge. And I wonder, and this is just us talking, but even if we were, which, I understand the distance between drives, and I also understand that Gilbert has jurisdiction based on what we've heard. Even if they were a main exit out on Baseline, I would be almost just as nervous about everyone exiting at the same time as Wrecker, and getting out right in front of them, and because that would have to be fairly close to that Wrecker exit, making it even possibly harder. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but it sounds as though we received clarification today that the traffic engineers do not currently have concerns for danger, nor are we hitting any of the markers for a signal as of yet. Any other comments or thoughts?
Can I jump in now?
Please, thank you, Board Member Allen.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I guess I'm struggling with this one a little bit. For one reason is the traffic, but of course I live not too far from the area. And I know the congestion that's really, which we want it to be, you know, it's kind of a catch-22. We want it and then we don't want it. But there's a same type of a traffic light you're talking about that's at the end of Pierpont, I think it's called, or the 48th Street alignment. Where you can turn and then you hit another light right away. That's the only way you can turn, you know, it comes out of a different subdivision there in Gilbert. So there is a way around it, and there is a way they can do that, just because based on that location where there's two lights within maybe 100 yards or less of each other. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about that the development, while it maybe offer more space, more amenities, all those type of things, there's a lot of houses, there are a lot of residences squeezed in on that lot. 76 doesn't sound like a lot until you, I guess, have to get behind all those people to get in or out either way until the traffic starts. And so I'm torn back and forth because I understand what the developer wants to do, and he has upgraded a lot of areas. But then there's also the neighborhood, that they have a certain characteristic of the neighborhood. So I'm struggling a little bit with the approval of the deviations based on, I guess, the impact of the area. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I'm struggling with this one.
I appreciate your comments, Board Member Allen. Any other thoughts from the board?
Can I just, Shelley, just to clarify, so you would feel more comfortable if it didn't have as many units? Is that part of your discomfort? If they didn't have the deviations and there were less units, is that what you're considering?
Well, that would be one thing, but then also if they, even with the deviations and as many units, if there was a better traffic flow or traffic pattern so that it really didn't impact the neighborhood, you know, maybe, I mean, there's an entrance and exit right off a baseline or something a little different that might deter, I guess, from impacting that neighborhood so much. I don't know.
Okay, I wanted to better understand what you were coming from. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
In some ways, I would hope that this would help trigger that signal, because they're already at a large weight, it sounds like, and I don't know. It's hard overall. I do agree with all of our back and forth here. There's so much to be concerned by. Well, do we have comments, or I could entertain a motion if people are ready and continue questions?
I don't think I have any other questions, Dane,
Okay, I appreciate that.
for myself.
Board Member Boyle, anything else you're needing?
No, I'm trying to look up the thing so that I can make a motion.
Okay.
If you're ready.
If no other Board Member Crockett, any other questions or concerns prior to making a motion of some sort?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Board Member Allen, anything on your end prior to Board Member Boyle's comment?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion. And if you could address both 3A and 4A as it relates to the preliminary.
Right, 3A and 4A. And, okay. Board and chair members, I'd like to move that we approve the item 3A, ZON 20-00283, District 2, and its companion case, item 4A, which is filed PZ 20116. The other one is PZ 20114. I move that we approve that with the recommended conditions. Do I need to read out more of the information on this?
I think that should be fine.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on this one. Chair Astle votes yes. Vice Chair Sarkisian absent. Board Member Boyle.
I vote yes.
Board Member Allen.
No.
Board Member Crockett.
No.
Board Member Ayers.
Yes.
The vote passes 3-2 with 2 people absent today. If I'm seeing that correctly, just making sure. Yes. Okay. First and foremost, I want everyone to realize that there's opportunity to also, and I would please recommend that you do address council, as this will be presented to council for review and approval. And can we make sure that those dates are public here right now? Staff, do we have those dates in our heads for when this might be presented to council?
Chair, board members, it will be introduced on October 5th to council with action planned on October 19th at their hearing.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. All right. Any other items from staff or Nana that you'd like to address prior to the conclusion of our meeting today?
Chair, no, thank you very much. That's all we have. We will see you on September 23rd.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I could entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second
Second.
that.
All in favor, vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Board Member Allen, are you sure you're in favor?
Yeah, I said aye. You didn't hear
I
me?
didn't hear. I wouldn't want to
Okay.
have to stay in the meeting too long if I didn't hear from you. But, all right, well, I
Exactly.
appreciate your time, and I'm grateful to everybody that was involved today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.